People who are retired often tell me they do more now than when they were employed. David Pearson's one of them. He's my guest today on Love Shaftesbury. In a moment he'll tell you why he loves our hilltop town. David is very busy serving our community.
I'm chairman of the Friends of St Peter's, which is keeps me reasonably active. It's not that much of an onerous task. And I work on the Abbey Gardens gardening team, which we tend to meet twice a week now, and just keep the gardens tidy and presentable for the visitors and for the town.
How did your involvement with Shaftesbury begin?
Well, funnily enough, and it's very ironical, but we moved to Shaftesbury 40 years ago. It was a so-called promotion from work. We were at that time living in York, and I was offered a promotion, but had to move to another region, and it happened to be classed as the South and Southwest. And I was originally asked to move to the Winchester, Basingstoke, Andover triangle.
Sounds like a UFO thing, doesn't it?
Take up residence, and I remember my daughter was only 4. We came down from York for a weekend, and we were encouraged to camp or stay in a hotel in Basingstoke, and I nipped out and had a quick look at Basingstoke and estate agents and immediately discounted that. I knew I couldn't afford Winchester, so we ended up in Andover on Saturday morning and looked at prices there and was quite alarmed at the difference. So the very kind estate agent, I remember saying, you sort of go north and go west, young man. So we ended up in Salisbury. And fortunately enough, my wife had a relative who lived in Gillingham, so we ended up here and we found Shaftesbury, and after a fair bit of searching, we ended up getting out of our house in York, and we lived in Bournemouth for 6 months.
So what were you doing? What was your job?
I was a salesman basically, but it was a technical sales role for a Swedish company who would manufacture engineering cutting tools for production of components, and the move down here was because of the aerospace industry and my so-called bit of expertise in that. So I ended up working with people like Westlands and it became GK and Airbus in Bristol, and I ultimately moved on and became the company's development manager for aerospace, and ended up travelling the world, promoting product and training our own people and working with key customers. And I really became a bit of a specialist on landing gear, undercarriage. I travelled a lot. I spent a lot of time away from home, mainly Mondays to Thursdays in the UK and abroad. And then when I retired in 17, I wanted to do 50 years of work, which I did. And then we decided we wouldn't go anywhere else, and I started looking for things to do to really say thank you to the town and pay something back to the town, really, I suppose.
How different was Shaftesbury of 1986 then?
Oh, unbelievable. I remember probably, as I say, we moved in the February, probably the Easter, we looked to come some decorating, and I wasn't that well organised. I had to become that well organised. Coming into town on Good Friday thinking I'd just pop to a DIY shop and not only there wasn't one as such, but everything was closed, and I had to either go to Yeovil or to Salisbury for a tin of paint, and you're suddenly looking at a 40-mile round trip. So it was, and I remember bakers and international stores, and it's a total different thing. But obviously I was lucky that I was out and about during the week, so I could organise myself better in the long term. But it had to become like that, really. You had to plan ahead much better because of just wasn't the choice or that I'd been used to in a city like York, or originally from Newcastle.
Has the look of the town changed at all?
A little bit. I wouldn't say too much. I mean, obviously shops have changed and shop fronts have changed, but I think sometimes till quite recently, since getting involved with Shaftesbury and Bloom and watering 3 times a week, you start to look up and look at the architecture and some of the buildings, which are really nice and quite fascinating in some cases. But I don't think it's changed that much. overall for me. I still like to walk up and down the town. I still love walking along Park Walk and take every opportunity that I can. And I've become quite passionate and very involved and attached to the Abbey, the gardens in particular. And it's a place that I like to go to regularly and quite often.
How different was the Abbey then 40 years ago? Obviously it was there, but did it feel different?
Yeah, the gardens were, I remember so we joined St Peter's Church quite early on after our arrival, and Margaret got involved with the choir, and I became deputy church warden for a while. But I remember being approached by an old gentleman called Cyril Dawson, who sadly ended up moving to Sherborne and has been dead a long time now, but asking me would I be interested in volunteering, and we'd go along him and I would go along on a Sunday afternoon for a couple of hours, and actually physically putting stones into some sort of shape and form.
So people might be looking at a wall now and think it dates back to the days of Henry, and you did it.
And exactly, and part of it probably was under the guidance of Cyril Dawson and myself, putting stones where I think there should be, but you never know, do you? You never know. But yeah, obviously it wasn't as open and as involved as it is now. Some work had been done, obviously trying to identify periods and parts of it, and obviously if there was any useful stones and features. But it was, obviously the museum side of it hadn't been built then. The lodge was there, what obviously would have been a house or a dwelling then. But yeah, and we used to spend a couple of hours on a Sunday afternoon fiddling about with stones, really. So it was much different. And ironically, then with travelling as much as I did, I lost touch. And then when I did retire and got involved, came back, and I've been there probably 5 years now, I would have thought, in the gardens, 4 or 5 years. And it's great, lovely.
What has changed in town that you miss? Businesses that have gone, and I'll ask you then about things which have come in since you've been here. What's no longer around for whatever reason?
I missed Ray Humphrey's shop, traditional hardware shop like Ray Hardware, and I was involved with the church, and we were doing a few repairs where you could go in and buy one screw or one bolt. You didn't have to buy a pack of 10. Obviously King Alfred's was there, because we actually had lunch on the day we moved, we'd had to go into storage, our furniture had to go into storage with being in rented accommodation, and Pickford's, because the national company we used, were bringing our furniture up from Weymouth, I think, so we had to wait patiently till that arrived, and we we didn't get a message. They didn't have things like mobile phones in them days, I don't think. We might have done. I think I remember having a pager.
Gosh.
Which
you go to a phone box and make a phone call.
Yes. I got a bit more savvy to that, and I used to go into hotels or somewhere warm and somewhere comfortable. So King Alfred's, I remember sitting upstairs having a bit of lunch, waiting for the allotted time that we could go to the house. So that was there, but I can't. Obviously, we've got lots of coffee shops now, and lots of pubs have improved. And
did you have a favourite pub then back then?
No, I didn't really. Tended not to do that much, but there was, and I can't remember its name. But if anywhere, there used to be one in the middle of town, next to Smith's. Because we got involved. I think it was, yes. We got involved with a few things there. I remember going to Goodwood races a few times on their outings. We got quite involved with the two brewers, with Richard and Maggie, who ran that for a good number of years, and it was a really, really good, thriving pub. And then they bought a pub in Street and spent most of their time over there, so it tended to lose its interest, and everything moved on and everything like that. But that was another favourite, especially maybe weekends or Easter or special occasions. Would go down and eat there.
You've stayed here. Why do you love it?
I like the layout of the place. I think it's It's historical. It's an old market town. I think I've got to know the people a lot better. Obviously, I didn't initially. And I think they were very suspicious of a Geordie who was never here. But seriously, I got to, through volunteering and get to know a lot of people. I've made some really good friends. And there's such a lovely mix of very nice, sociable, friendly people. And they made us very, very welcome. We've got involved with a number of things now. And I keep going back to Shaftesbury and Bloom, but there's this core people there who have become very, very good friends, someone you could rely on, someone who we spend time and have lots of fun and lots of laughs with, and we just feel very comfortable.
So when you've been away, what do you see on the horizon as you drive back that makes you think I'm almost home?
Past Stonehenge, up the other side, and then we reach coming down where you're coming in towards Hindon, and you see that vista as the road drops away. I usually turn off left and come the back road through Hindon, but when I see that, whatever time of day or night and whatever the weather, I think we're back in Dorset, although we're not quite, but I think we're back in Dorset, and we're nearly home, and nice to be home.
David Pearson telling us why he loves Shaftesbury.